What is up guys, Eric here from Real Film Reviews bringing you another movie review, this time for the new Ben Affleck film, The Accountant. The Accountant stars Ben Affleck, Anna Kendrick, J.K. Simmons, John Lithgow, and Jon Bernthal. It is the story of a man who, raised from being a boy, has a genius-level intellect, but also struggles with regular human interactions. And in this, he becomes an accountant. But he becomes an accountant for dangerous people, drug cartels, terrorist organizations. So he makes a lot of enemies, and this movie tells the story of him sort of figuring out a way to make it out of one dangerous situation that he is in. I really am trying my best not to spoil anything in this movie because there's a lot of depth to this film that actually really surprised me. And going off of that, of a story about a man who has some type of mental disability but uses it to his advantage throughout this film is really interesting, and I think it's really brought to life in Ben Affleck's phenomenal performance. He's amazing in this movie. This is his second of 3 movies that he will be releasing this year, which is crazy. But he does a great job throughout this whole film, and he really sells the action, which is one thing that I was sort of iffy on. He really proved it to me in The Town, and then in Batman v Superman, he doesn't have a ton of action sequences besides really the one warehouse fight, which was mostly hand-to-hand combat. But I did feel like this movie proved that he has those characteristics that you need to be a real action star. Now, Gavin O'Connor, who directed Warrior, directs this film, and he does a really good job filming all of the action. There were a couple sequences where there was some shaky camera and hand-to-hand combat scenes, but as a whole, I thought he did a really good job showing us this story about this man. And like I said before, I'm sorry I'm being so vague with all of this, but I really don't want to spoil anything about this movie because I had a great time with it. The action in this film is really, really well choreographed in terms of the shootout sequences, and this movie reminded me of John Wick a decent amount. It's not as great as John Wick in terms of the action, but I feel like the character building that we get in this movie about Ben Affleck's character and some of the supporting cast sort of oversells what we get in John Wick, because in John Wick they build this great universe, where in this movie I felt they built characters more. And as I said, Ben Affleck does give a great performance in this movie, and the supporting cast in this movie all does a very good job. But the 2 people that I want to pick out particularly are Anna Kendrick, because she brings a nice comedic relief to this film. Her character is a very normal girl who gets mixed up in this situation, and she helps bring some laughs and some lightness to this movie that feels very serious for most of the film, and I thought that she did a really good job at that. Her character has one scene in particular with Ben Affleck that really worked, where they're eating lunch together, and it was really funny to watch this interaction because we know that Ben Affleck's character is extremely socially awkward, but she doesn't know that, so she's still trying to interact with him. And the other person that I have to give props to, who I feel like I'm constantly giving props to, is Jon Bernthal. Jon Bernthal is so good. I love watching Jon Bernthal on screen. I love him as the Punisher on Daredevil, and I felt like in this movie, he also brought a little bit of a comic relief. He's a less serious character in this film, even though he has a very serious job in the movie. I feel like Jon Bernthal always sells the action sequences that he's in. When I see Jon Bernthal in a movie, or as the Punisher on Daredevil, he really sells the action sequences. He comes off as someone that is trained and is able to really kill all these people, which is sort of strange, but I think in action films, sometimes you see a character who does something and it doesn't feel real. When you look at that person, you don't think, oh, that person could do that, which helps with some characters. For example, Ben Affleck's lead character in this movie doesn't come off as a character who could do what he does, but Bernthal really sells those action sequences that he's involved in. It has a lot of fun twists throughout the film, which I really have to give props to the fact that this is an original story. This isn't based on a book, it's not based on a TV show, it's not based on anything. A guy just wrote this script, and I feel like less and less action movies, or really blockbuster films like this, are coming out like that. Most of them are based on something, which isn't a bad thing, but it's really nice to watch something that's just an original idea written for film. And I thought that it worked really well in this movie, and I thought the story had enough going on that it kept you interested throughout the whole thing. And I think if this movie is maybe somewhat of an underground hit like John Wick was, we could maybe get a sequel to it. My only issues with the film were there were a couple plot devices used early on in the film that felt fairly unnecessary, and when you met characters it sort of made you dislike them initially, which I think goes into the other issue is the morality of this film. Our lead character is not necessarily a good person. Even though he is our hero, he is not really a good guy in the sense of what a good guy normally is. And it makes for a very interesting movie and a very enjoyable movie, but it also sort of leaves you with this moral stance of how do I really stand with the accountant? Because his character is very enjoyable and he comes off as the character you are supposed to be rooting for, while at the same time he does some things throughout this film that maybe aren't okay. I'm gonna give The Accountant an A-. This movie was a ton of fun in theaters. It's just a great popcorn movie. You can go in with a group of friends, watch the awesome action sequences, and have a great time with a story that also is really interesting that gets you invested in the characters. Well guys, as always, I'm Eric. If you enjoyed this review, please do like, subscribe, comment down below what you thought of The Accountant, share everything we do here on Real Film Reviews, check out my new Halloween Netflix special that will be released on Sunday, and I hope to see you guys later.